Mueller's hearing present make or break moment for Democrats. That was the headline in the New York Times. Make or break moment. For 2 years, Democrats have waited on Robert Mueller to deliver a death blow to the Trump presidency. Wednesday's hearings with the special counsel could be their last chance. Well, here's what Rachel Dratch said. I don't know if you saw this, but I thought this was interesting. It said, the act of looking forward to the Mueller hearings as if anything will come of it feels like having lunch with an ex that you are hoping to get back together with. So, Aaron, I want to go over some really quickly, some real important. First of all, everyone's in agreement that it was a debacle for Mueller. So here's a guy named Lawrence. Show Lawrence Tribe's tweet, leading Russiagator. He says, much as I hate to say it, this morning's hearing was a disaster. Far from breathing life into his damning report, the tired Robert Mueller sucked the life out of it. The effort to save democracy and the rule of law from this lawless president has been set back, not advanced. I love how the democracy and the rule of law just got fucked up the last 2 years. Isn't that something? Isn't that amazing? It was just the last 2 years it's been messed. It's been perfect up until then. Even though we now have war criminals dancing with Ellen on daytime television and everyone cheers them, and Barack Obama says he's a brother from another mother, but they still hate Ralph Nader, but they still love war criminal George Bush. Just keep that in mind. So corruption, again, just started. So Lawrence Tribe is one of those guys who tells you that corruption just started in January 2017. And so let's bring in Aaron right now. So hi, Aaron. How are you?
Hey, Jimmy. How you doing?
So you saw it, you watched it. Let me show you what David Axelrod said. If you take here, he goes, "This is very painful." Did you see that, Aaron? When he tweeted this out, this is very painful. Talking about the Mueller. So let's get to. So just give me your recap. What did you think? You saw it. What was your overall take on the Mueller? First, you know what? Go ahead, do that, and then I'm going to find the video I want to show you. Go ahead.
I think today underscored why people like you and me, Jimmy, have been warning from the start that this thing was baseless. There was no evidence of a Trump-Russia conspiracy, and that putting our faith in Robert Mueller to validate it and be the savior figure was just moronic and a massive political gift to Donald Trump. And, Robert Mueller put that on display today. Adam Schiff had said beforehand that he wanted Mueller to bring the report to life. Well, Mueller did, because the report is a dud, and today was a massive dud. Mueller seemed unaware of key contents of his report. NBC News did a tracker, and they said that Mueller deflected or declined to answer 198 times. Mm-hmm. And he claimed so often that even things that were inside the scope of his report were now no longer in his purview. So when he was asked about the role of the Steele dossier, he was asked even whether or not they'd found evidence that Trump campaign had conspired in the release of stolen emails by WikiLeaks. Mueller said that that wasn't in his purview, or he was unaware. So it's like, Democrats tried to get him to say, that Trump committed obstruction, which is now their only hope because the collusion thing is so dumb and so discredited. And in fact, I think in the perfect encapsulation of Russiagate possible, Mueller said something that was like, oh, bombshell, because he was talking to Ted Lieu, and he said something that made it sound like he would have indicted Trump if not for the OLC memo, which says you can't indict a sitting president. And so everyone was like, bombshell, bombshell. But then later on when Mueller appeared before the House Intelligence Committee, an hour or so later, in his opening statement, he said, I want to correct something I said before. I was not saying that, but for the OLC memo, I would have indicted Trump. So basically, Mueller had to retract his bombshell. And I can't think of a bigger encapsulation of Russiagate possible, where we've had so many Mueller bombshells having to be retracted and discredited than Mueller retracting his own bombshell himself.
So it was amazing to watch Mueller testify. He seemed worse than Joe Biden. The guy doesn't seem to have even control of his faculties. Like when you said that he wasn't aware of the stuff that's in his report, he wasn't aware of the stuff that's in his own report. Like Robert Mueller looked like a puppet that they just stuck a stick up his ass and put him on that thing. He didn't know what he was. I'll give you an example. Of how out of touch with his own report Robert Mueller was. Now, the whole thing started with this Steele dossier. Now, the Steele dossier was funded by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign. What does that mean, funded? So they hired a company called Fusion GPS to go dig up dirt on Donald Trump. That's called opposition research. So they hired a spy, a former spy, a foreign spy from England, Richard Steele, to go dig up dirt on him because he had ties with the people in Russia. So what Richard Steele did was he called people he knew inside the Kremlin and asked for dirt on Donald Trump, and they made up stories because Richard Steele was paying them for their stories. So that's how the dossier got put together. By the way, it's all bullshit, the dossier. Complete bullshit, completely made up, and the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton lied for a year straight to investigators that they funded it. So that's where the real scandal is. Then they used that bullshit Steele dossier. They used that to get the FISA warrant on the Trump administration so they could spy on them. They used opposition research paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign to get a FISA warrant, which is highly unethical to do that. I'm correct so far, right, Aaron?
Well, yeah, one thing, Jimmy, I just think you might be giving the Steele dossier too much credit to even suggest that anything might have come from anybody in Russia, whether or not they were lying about it. I think it's possible that Steele didn't even speak to anybody in Russia at all, and that he had just some source who claimed to know some Russians, because there is some evidence that a lot of his stuff was heard secondhand, and they basically read the newspaper, made up some stuff that could fit with public developments. Because there's a lot of things in the Steele dossier that only come up after they've appeared in the newspaper. For example, Carter Page visiting Moscow,
right?
Or, and so basically, whoever it was, whether they're Russian or not, certainly, yeah, it was bullshit. Yes, the FBI used the Steele dossier in a FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page, an American citizen. They said that we believe that Carter Page is coordinating between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. And source number one for that was the Steele dossier. But of course, they hid the fact that the Democratic Party was paying for it. They used some vague language that
they hid it. They literally hid it. They hid that. They hid information from the FISA court. And when you say they got a FISA warrant on Carter Page, I said that they got a FISA warrant on the Trump campaign. Both are true, because if you get a FISA warrant on Carter Page, there's a two-hop rule, as been explained to me by Bill Binney, which means they can now listen to anybody that he talks to, and anybody that he talks to. So that means anybody he talked to inside the Trump administration, they can listen to their conversations, and anybody those people talk to else, they can. So they got everybody on that one FISA warrant. They got the entire Trump campaign on that one FISA warrant. Now here he's going to be asked about the Steele dossier and the Fusion GPS. I know who Fusion GPS is. You know me, a guy in my fucking garage. I know who Fusion GPS is. I know who Richard Steele is, and I know that the dossier is complete discredited. Watch the guy who ran this investigation for 2 years. The head of the FBI guy doesn't know what it is. Watch this.
When discussing the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting, you referenced, quote, the firm that produced the Steele reporting, unquote. The name of that firm was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
And you're on page 103?
103, that's correct, volume 2. When you talk about the firm that produced the Steele reporting, the name of the firm that produced that was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with.
He's not familiar with Fusion GPS. This guy, it's like, who are you talking? What, are you talking to my grandmother? Who are you? You're the head of the investigation, are you not? I know who Fusion GPS is. Arno knows who fucking Fusion GPS is. My tech guy. Everybody knows who Fusion GPS is. And here is a renowned liar, Robert Mueller, who lied us into the Iraq War. One of the guys is now pretending not to know so what he's doing is lying. And why is, I'll play the rest of this and then we'll talk about why he's lying.
With that,
let me just help. It's not a trick question. It was Fusion GPS.
It's not even a trick question. It's like the guy wasn't trying to trip him up. He's just trying to set up some facts before he gets to his question that's going to trick him up. And Robert Mueller gets tricked up by that question. What?
Now, Fusion GPS produced the opposition research document widely known as the Steele dossier. And the owner of Fusion GPA was someone named Glenn Simpson. Are you familiar with?
This is outside my purview.
Okay.
Not outside its purview. That's also a lie. So it's two lies in one question. He lied he didn't know who GPS Fusion was. He's lying that guy's outside of his purview. Am I overstating it, Aaron?
No, I mean, look, it's like maybe Mueller can come up with some explanation for what he thought he was being asked, and that's what he was responding to, something that, that was not clear to those of us watching it. But yeah, it looks really puzzling that he keeps saying that, this is not outside his purview, especially since, the key Russian participant in the Trump Tower meeting, Natalia Veselnitskaya, she met with Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS.
So now, now we're going to get into this part.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to play this, and then you'll come back and you'll explain to the people why this is important.
Glenn Simpson was never mentioned in the 448-page Mueller report, was he?
Well, as I say, it's outside my purview, and it's being handled in the department by others.
Okay. Well, he was not. 448 pages. The owner of Fusion GPS that did the Steele dossier, that started all this, he's not mentioned in there. Let me move on. At the same time, Fusion GPS was working to collect opposition research on Donald Trump from foreign sources on behalf of the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. It also was representing a Russian-based company, Prevazon, which had been sanctioned by the U.S. government. Are you aware of that?
It's outside my purview.
So what he just pointed out to the lead investigator, special counsel, was that the company that was digging up dirt from foreign spies on Donald Trump at the behest of the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign, they were digging up dirt on Donald Trump from foreign governments, that the guy who owned that company also met with a woman who was supposed to be meeting with Trump's people at the Trump Tower meeting. That was the big meeting that was supposed to be treason, where he was supposed to be getting dirt on Hillary Clinton from a foreign entity. And so what's important about that is that the woman, what's her name, Aaron? How do you say her name?
Natalia Veselnitskaya.
So Natalia Veselnitskaya, I can't say it, but you said it well.
Yes.
So she was the person at that meeting with Trump, and she had meetings with the owner of Fusion GPS before that meeting, and she had meetings with the owner of GPS Fusion after that Trump Tower meeting. And so, well, here's what they say. Steele authored and compiled information for the controversial unverified anti-Trump dossier on behalf of Fusion GPS, the firm that was hired to conduct opposition research funded by the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign. Fox News reported in 2017 that co-founder of Fusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, met with Veselnitskaya, which is the woman at before and after the meeting in Trump Tower. Now, a Mueller report references the firm on page 103, noting that President Trump's legal team suggested that the meeting with Veselnitskaya, former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and Trump's eldest son, Don Trump Jr., and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, might have been a setup by individuals working for the firm that produced the Steele reporting. So what they're saying, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, is that so this woman who had the meeting with Trump and not Trump, but with Kushner, Trump Jr. At the Trump Tower meeting, she was working with the opposition firm hired by the Clintons. So what it looks like is that she was trying to bait the Trump campaign into doing something that they could say was illegal so that they could then, which is exactly what happened, isn't it? Now, what do you say to that?
So yeah, listen, it's certainly plausible. There's no proof of that yet, but it's one more strange coincidence where you have all these people with connections not to Russia but to the West and to U.S. officials and to Democrats who are engaged in suspicious contacts with the Trump campaign. Same with the supposed predicate of the entire Trump-Russia investigation, which is Joseph Mifsud, who I'll get to in a second. But let me just say about the Trump Tower meeting. It's possible it was just a coincidence that Veselnitskaya is working with the same firm that is accusing Trump of collusion and is forming the basis for the FBI getting surveillance warrants. Could be a coincidence. It's possible, right? We don't know. But you know what? But no matter what, the Trump Tower meeting it's so much more of a joke because the reason why it was deemed a smoking gun it was not even because of Veselnitskaya, but it's because of this email that Rob Goldstone got Don Jr. got from a British music publicist named Rob Goldstone. That's where he said that the Russian government is compromising information on Hillary Clinton and our dealings with Russia, and we'd like to offer it to the Trump campaign, and this is a part of the Russian government and its support for Mr. Trump. And, everybody says this is proof of collusion. Adam Schiff always highlights this. It came up a lot today. But what nobody mentions and what Mueller leaves out of his report, which is so strange, because Mueller includes, of course, that there was no actual information provided in the meeting. It was a dud. But what Mueller omits is that the offer that Goldstone sent to John Jr. was fake, and he was not acting on behalf of the Russian government. Rob Goldstone is a British music publicist working for a Russian pop star who asked him to get a meeting for his Russian associates, Veselnitskaya. And so Goldstone, by his own account, and I just interviewed him, he made all this up. He made up that there was a crown prosecutor in Russia because there is no crown prosecutor. He got that from his home country of Britain. He made up the fact that the Russian government wants to give compromising information on Hillary Clinton. And by the way, in her dealings with Russia, which is that's not even about the content of stolen emails. So basically what is deemed to be a smoking gun, Mueller leaves out the fact that it was a lie. It was fictitious. And so it's supposed to be taken seriously that the Trump campaign or Don Jr. took this meeting, But so Don Jr. took a meeting that was based on a phony offer. Okay. All right. Maybe he should have called the FBI. I mean, I don't really care. And the fact is that people get dirt on their opponents all the time. But the point is the offer itself was fake. And there's this disingenuous pattern of of supposed damning Russia contacts like this one, even though it's not actually a Russian contact. It's a fake email from a music publicist. And the same thing with Konstantin Kilimnik. We heard his name a lot today, where Mueller had said that this Manafort business associate is tied to Russian intelligence. He never explains what that means. And we've since learned that Mueller left out the fact that Kilimnik actually has far more extensive U.S. ties. He's a State Department source. But because Kilimnik is a business associate of Paul Manafort, and because Manafort shared some polling data with him that was public, by the way, that turned into this crazy theory that we're still hearing about on MSNBC. I heard it a few days ago, this being floated, and it was floated again by Democrats today, that Kilimnik got the polling data from Manafort, and then Kilimnik passed that on to his Russian Kremlin allies, and the Kremlin used that for their supposed sophisticated social media targeting campaign, even though, of course, we know the social media was juvenile clickbait, and even though Mueller has had to admit in court recently that the social media that this Russian troll farm put out had nothing to do with the Russian government, that all this is somehow damning. And Mueller leaves out the fact that Kilimnik has all these extensive Western ties. And he was pressed on that today, and he couldn't answer. He said, I'm not going to get into that.
So time and time again, when Mueller was pressed on something, the word I use is he lied. He would lie, and he's used to lying to Congress. He lied to us about the Iraq weapons of mass destruction and Al-Qaeda. He did that. He went right along. That's why he was chosen for this role, because he's a company man. He's going to go along with what the establishment and the intelligence community wants him to do. So he knows that there's no crime. In fact, watch that. So he knows there's no crime, and what he's actually doing is he's trying to still put a cloud out there in service of the establishment that there is a crime, even though he can't prove it, even though he investigated it for 2 years. This is nothing but an establishment hoax, as Glenn Greenwald calls it. It is a hoax being perpetrated on the American people, and Robert Mueller is the perfect tool to help perpetrate that hoax. And by the way, I think he got completely revealed today. And so that reveals him he's pretending that the guy who owns Fusion GPS wasn't inside his purview. That's a lie. He's also pretending to not know who GPS Fusion is. That's also a lie. You know how I know it's a lie? Because I fucking know who they are. Okay, that's how you know. That's how I know. So now watch this question by Mueller. First, he's gonna be asked, did your report conclude that was there any evidence of anybody from the Trump campaign colluding with anybody from the Russian government? No, there wasn't. That's what your report says, and then he agrees to that. Watch this.
Is it true the evidence gathered during your investigation did not establish that the president was involved in the underlying crime related to Russian election interference as stated in Volume 1, page 7?
We found insufficient evidence of the president's culpability.
So that would be a yes.
Pardon?
That would be a yes.
Yes.
What was it? What is he doing? He asked him a direct question. Did you find any evidence of Trump or his campaign colluding with Russian officials? Well, we found insufficient evidence. You mean you didn't find any evidence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, Jimmy. What he's trying to do is using a reverse standard of justice where you assume he's guilty.
Yes.
That's the problem here. Mueller, as you say, is a company man. So he had to validate this whole thing, this decision by the FBI to investigate the Trump campaign, and then later on to investigate Trump as a Russian agent. Literally, in the spring of 2017, they opened up a new investigation of Trump as a Russian agent, which we still haven't gotten the bottom of. It's crazy. And so he tries to use this suggestive language. Well, we found insufficient evidence. No, you actually found no evidence. And that's why your report contains no evidence.
No evidence.
And when he gets pressed on that, he has to admit it. But they use this disingenuous language to throw red meat to their base, which is the people in the intelligence community, and it's people who watch MSNBC. And it's so disingenuous, and it's what's hyped up this thing for so long, even though there's actually nothing there. I really wanted somebody to ask Mueller, did anybody from the Trump campaign meet with anybody actually acting on the Russian government's behalf? There's all this talk about contacts with Russia.
Right.
And we're supposed to assume that because somebody in the Trump camp speaks to somebody who's from Russia or speaks to someone who claims to know somebody who is from Russia, that's suspicious. But missing from all this is any actual interaction between a Trump associate and somebody who's actually acting on the Kremlin's behalf. There's only two exceptions. There's the Russian ambassador, which that's what happens during campaigns is the ambassadors meet people. Like you're in Washington, you interact with people from foreign governments. That's what happens. And then there's a Kremlin press office assistant who calls back Michael Cohen to say, I'm sorry, we can't help you build Trump Tower, Moscow. So that is the only actual interaction between the Trump camp and anybody acting on behalf of the Kremlin. And that's why the Mueller report even says that after Trump won, the Kremlin and top Russian elites wanted to reach out to the Trump camp, but they didn't have any pre-existing contacts. Exactly, because they didn't conspire with them before the election. So of course they're not going to have
in the Mueller report,
after the election.
Aaron, in the Mueller report, it says that the Russian government, Putin's government, after Trump won the election, wanted to reach out to the Trump campaign or Trump's administration, and they didn't have a contact number to do that. That's what the report says, Aaron?
That's right. They did not have pre-existing contacts. And so if they don't have pre-existing contacts after the election, then what are the odds that they conspired in a massive election conspiracy before the election? It doesn't really make sense unless they have a time machine where they somehow erase their pre-existing contacts. They no longer have them after the election. I don't know.
So that's not Trump saying that. That's the Mueller report says that. The Mueller report itself says that the Russian government didn't have a way to get in contact with the Trump administration after the election. That's what it says in the Mueller report.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Right. By the way, I don't want to, I want to actually highlight that Mueller actually did debunk some conspiracy theories today. Basically, on a lot of things, he basically declined to answer, but a few things, for some reason, he did answer. Mm-hmm. So remember the whole thing about, this was the subject of a major article in the New Yorker, supposedly a serious liberal publication, and it was in the Atlantic, and of course it was on MSNBC a lot, that the Trump Tower, or like the Trump organization, had communicated via a secret server to Alpha Bank, a Russian bank. And the theory was, and this was the subject, I swear to God, it's a long article in the New Yorker, debated in serious journals.
I know what this is. I know this story.
You covered this. You covered this. So Mueller was asked about it. He said, no, there's no evidence of it. It's not there. Mueller also was asked whether he uncovered any evidence of compromat. Remember compromat? We heard about that every single day for 2 years, about how the Russians have blackmailed Donald Trump through some sort of financial dealings that we still haven't heard about yet, or a P tape. Robert Mueller said he found no evidence of compromise.
That's Cenk Uygur's theory that they have compromising stuff on him financially, right? That's what Cenk Uygur's theory is, right?
That's right. And by the way, Mueller was asked, did anybody ask you or tell you from the Justice Department not to look into Trump's finances? Because that was a big concern pushed by people who think that the smoking gun is there. And Mueller said, no, nobody told us not to look into Trump's finances. By the way, and then soon after, Mueller was asked, did you obtain Trump's tax returns? And Mueller declined to answer. And I've been told by someone who I consider very knowledgeable that actually they did get the Trump tax returns, but when it comes to Russia, there was just nothing to go on there. By the way, I mean, if we care about financial ties to Russia, and I don't adopt the xenophobic mentality that having business in Russia or knowing people in Russia is suspicious. I think we should treat every country equally, no matter their nationality. Although some people, it's fashionable these days to think that Russia, as James Clapper said once, are genetically driven to co-opt and mislead people. But I don't subscribe to that. But by the way, if we care about that, then if you want to look at real financial ties to Russia, Bill Clinton, back when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, he gave a speech to a Russian bank that was being sanctioned for $500,000.
That's one of his top fees he ever charged for a speech was, and who paid that fee? Who paid it?
It was a Russian bank. It was a sanctioned Russian bank.
Half a
And by the way,
million.
on the trip, he even got a personal phone call from Vladimir Putin thanking him. And around that same time, Hillary Clinton started opposing those same sanctions that bank that paid Bill Clinton was under. And we know now from the DNC leaks that came out that the Clinton campaign celebrated the fact that Bloomberg was going to run a story in the summer of 2016, or at some point in 2016 during the campaign, raising questions about Bill Clinton getting $500,000 from a Russian bank, and the Clinton campaign succeeded the fact that they'd killed that story.
Yeah,
So whatever. But I don't. In terms of the scale of Clinton corruption, I think it's probably pretty low. But I think anybody getting $500,000 for a speech is corrupt to begin with. So I don't think it's necessarily bad just because it's from Russia. But if we care about Russian money, I mean, there's more. What the point is there is more proven financial ties between the Clintons and the Russians or Russia than there is Donald Trump and Russia. That's just an unfortunate fact, one of many that gets overlooked. And Mueller today saying that no one stopped him from looking into the finances. Mueller also said, did anybody impede your investigation at all? No. It was obstructed in no way, which then makes it difficult to bring an obstruction case if the guy carrying out the investigation says his investigation was not obstructed.
that's amazing. All right, so I know you have to go because you're very busy now at your show called Pushback on the Gray Zone. And but if you have a few more minutes, I want to play the rest. Of this. Okay, so now watch. Mueller again gets caught completely lying. Watch this.
Isn't it true the evidence did not establish that the president or those close to him were involved in the charged Russian computer hacking or active measure conspiracies, or that the president otherwise had unlawful relationships with any Russian official? Volume 2, page 76.
So now he's just asking him one more time. From your own report, was there any contact whatsoever? Was there any cybercrime, any evidence of any kind of thing between Trump's administration and Russians doing any kind of nefarious? No, there wasn't, according to your report. And what does Mueller say?
Correct.
I leave the answer to the report.
Correct.
So as a yes. Is that any true? Your investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with Russian government in the election interference activity. Volume 1, page 2, volume 1, page 173.
Thank you. Yes.
Again. Now, because your investigation found no evidence of anything. Correct. Yes.
Thank you. Although your report states
so now here is where he lies again. This is where this guy catches him in a lie. Watch this. His report, this is when they start to talk about collusion and conspiracy. Now, in the report, Robert Mueller says that collusion and conspiracy are considered synonyms in legal parlance. In the report, he says that. But when he was asked about that in his testimony, he said they aren't considered synonyms. So he's contradicting himself again, which is what liars do all the time. And so he's lying. And so now this guy wants to ask him, when were you lying? Are you lying in the report, or are you lying now in your testimony? And Robert Mueller, honest to God, he looks like he just got woken up out of a fucking 20-year sleep, and he has no idea what the fuck is going on. Watch this. Watch this.
Is not so specific offense, and you said that this morning, or a term of art in federal criminal law. Conspiracy is. In the colloquial context, are collusion and conspiracy essentially synonymous terms?
You're going to have to repeat that for me.
Collusion is not a specific offense or a term of art in the federal criminal law. Conspiracy is.
Yes.
In the colloquial context, known public context, collusion and conspiracy are essentially synonymous terms, correct?
No.
If no, on page 180 of volume 1 of your report, you wrote, as defined in legal dictionaries, collusion is largely synonymous with conspiracy, as that crime is set forth in the General Federal Conspiracy Statute 18 U.S.C. 371.
So he just asked him, is collusion and conspiracy considered the similar or synonyms colloquially? And Robert Mueller just said, no, they are not. He goes, well, in your frickin' report, you say they are considered synonyms and the same thing in legal parlance. You say it in your report, and now you're saying completely something different in your testimony. And my question would be, why are you lying? But that's not his question, but let's watch.
You said at your May 29th press conference and here today, you choose your words carefully. Are you sitting here today testifying something different than what your report states?
Well, what I'm asking is if you can give me the citation, I can look at the citation.
He's pretending to not know the question. Again, I know he's lying and full of shit, and you know how I know? Because I understand the question. That's why. And I already smoked pot this morning. I understand the question. So that's how I know Robert Mueller understands the question, and he's fucking lying. Okay, here we go.
And evaluate whether it is.
Okay, let me just be clarified. You stated that you would stay within the report. I just stated your report back to you. And you said that collusion and conspiracy were not synonymous terms. That was your answer, was no.
That's correct.
In that, page 180 of volume 1 of your report, it says, as defined in legal dictionaries, collusion is largely synonymous with conspiracy, as that crime is set forth in General Conspiracy Statute 18 U.S.C. 371. Now, you said you chose your words carefully. Are you contradicting your report right now?
Not when I read it.
So you
I mean, I think this is when David Axelrod tweeted out, "This is painful."
It was so awkward
because
it was so awkward, and that was big because Mueller initially tried to get away with saying, "Well, we didn't look into collusion," so which then leaves the impression that maybe there was collusion. But again, having his own quote reported to him, where collusion is largely synonymous with conspiracy, the crime he cleared Trump on. It was just painful. I got to wrap, Jimmy. So I wanted to say one more thing that came to mind. I mean, there's so much today, and
that we should. I thought
we should talk more about it in the coming days.
Okay.
But, one thing Mueller did do is he validated this ongoing fear mongering about Russia. He said, he was asked about Russian interference, and he said they're doing it. They're doing it as we sit here. They're doing it as we sit here, and they expect to do it in the next campaign. And, and that was echoed by Democratic lawmakers. One Democratic lawmaker, I didn't catch her name, she called Russia's alleged interference, so again, stolen emails and juvenile social media clickbait. She called it a, quote, invasion. She said, I wouldn't call it interference, I'd call it an invasion. And Adam Schiff, of course, doing what he does, he called alleged Russian interference, quote, the most serious attack on our democracy by a foreign power in our history. Tell that maybe the people who are around for Pearl Harbor.
This is called propaganda. This is called tell that to the people who are in the Twin Towers on 9/11.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like one thing Mueller did, and which no party is going to challenge. The Republicans aren't going to challenge this because all they care about is exonerating Trump. Is that Mueller continued this unhinged Russia baiting, blaming Russia for everything. Recently I sent you, like we talked about this, where or Kamala Harris blamed Russian bots for the Colin Kaepernick controversy. So that is bipartisan, and that's going to keep going. And Robert Mueller continued that today. And so, I think the collusion aspect might maybe die down now. I mean, because I don't know how Democrats could possibly anyway. But I've said that before. So
yes,
but
what is
bipartisan?
Go ahead.
What is bipartisan is the Russia baiting, and that will continue.
You mean so? You mean the xenophobia?
The xenophobia and the fear mongering and the doing sort of painting Russia as this mortal threat, which ultimately only justifies the privileged positions and the policies of the same people who gave us Russiagate to begin with. Because intelligence officials who investigated Trump, they didn't challenge him because they don't like his misogyny or his racism or his xenophobia. They challenged him, or they investigated him because they didn't like he was talking about not being a military interventionist, even though I think that was a con on Trump's part. And also Trump was saying he wanted to get along with Russia. That's what I think, sparked their concern, of course, which then dovetails with the interests of the failed neoliberal Democrats who lost to Trump, needed an excuse. And so the result of that was this, 2-year plus thing where Robert Mueller is painted as a savior figure. And his performance today, I think, underscores in the clearest terms possible why that was such a disaster.
Can I, before I let you go, can I just read from the book Shattered? So this was the book that was written right after the campaign, and it tells you exactly where the Russiagate comes from, okay? So this is from that book. It says, the strategy had been set within a 24 hours of her concession speech. Robbie Mook and Podesta assembled her communications team at the Brooklyn headquarters to engineer the case that the election wasn't entirely on the up and up. For a couple of hours, with Shake Shack containers littering the room, they went over the script that would pitch to the press and to the public. Already, Russian hacking was the centerpiece of the argument.
That's right.
Everyone, that's in the. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, Jimmy. That's what it all comes from. And unfortunately, too many people got enrolled in what was an exercise by the failed Clinton camp to deflect blame for their loss, to blame Russia, to concoct a conspiracy theory, and make that the way to resist Trump, not present a real viable alternative to Trump and to the neoliberal Democrats that he defeated, because that is the way to beat him, not through a conspiracy fantasy, but through being an actual opposition party, which means challenging the corporate sectors that neoliberal Democrats are beholden to. And there's a refusal to do that because that would threaten their own privileged position and their own policies and their own legacy. And so instead we got Russiagate instead. And look where it brought us today. Just another humiliation and a massive dud.
So, Aaron, don't you think what is exactly happening is what Russiagate has done? Russiagate has been an evidence-free red-baiting conspiracy theory, and it was concocted. One of the big reasons was to distract people away from the real reason that they lost to a game show host and a political novice. That was the big reason. Of course, the news also liked it because it got ratings. Trump, Russia, it's just like war. It gets ratings. The intelligence community liked it because it helps ramp up more. And the military-industrial complex, intelligence, it ramps up more money for defense budgets, hundreds of billions of dollars, right? And so we're peace is not good for those people. So it served a lot of interests. It's right out there. It's an evidence-free, red-baiting conspiracy theory designed to distract us from the real causes of why Donald Trump became president. That's what Russiagate is. Anyway, I know you got to go. We're going to play a couple more videos, but that Robert Mueller thing was a debacle today, and again predicted he would have nothing good to say that would satiate the Russiagators, just like we predicted that his report would be bullshit. I didn't predict it. You predicted it, and I repeated your prediction. And because I know you, and because I know Bill Binney, and because I know John Kiriakou, and because I listened to Julian Assange saying he didn't get any of this from the Russians, I know that this was all bullshit. And it doesn't, just like Greg Palast explained, you don't have to be a great investigative reporter. You don't even have to be a bad one. All you have to do is stick your head down the street and see what's happening and report back. And that's all I'm doing. And so I have access to guys like you. I have access to guys like Bill Binney. So does Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow, and Jake Tapper. Oh, by the way, I'm sure that they're going to have you on now, right, to talk about the Mueller thing because you won an award about this and you write for The Nation and everybody knows who you are now. So MSNBC probably invited you on, right?
Well, this is the point, Jimmy. I mean, Russiagate has underscored that so much of media, and unfortunately too many of our progressive media colleagues have fallen for this too, that so much of media now is about reinforcing establishment narratives. And if you don't go along with that, then you get attacked and scorned. That's what happened to you and I. You know, so many people dismissed us for warning for 2 years that this whole thing was a joke and was going to backfire. And, you know, it's so, you know, there are fine lines now. And that's why it just underscores the importance of independent media and people who are, you know, not in it to get invited to parties with people who work at who work at the DNC or at MSNBC, but people who actually care about following facts and building, you know, a real movement in this country, a real progressive movement that's about, you know, policies and not, you know, based on worshiping Robert Mueller and other intelligence officials and counting on a conspiracy fantasy to bring them down. And I hope all the people, I hope especially all of our colleagues in progressive media, and there's a lot of them, I hope that they can see today, if they haven't seen it yet, what a disaster this was for them. And I hope this will teach them to be, you know, not so credulous, that just because something is portrayed to us as being anti-Trump, because it was fashionable to think that this was the way to resist Trump. And so everybody felt the kind of pressure to go along with it. But just because we're told that, it doesn't mean that it's actually true. And it doesn't mean we have to go along with it. It's our job as journalists in the media and as progressives to follow the facts and to, you know, resist, you know, phony narratives that are done not in the interest of a real democracy or protecting the country, but in the interest of protecting the privilege of failed neoliberal elites.
So do you think the Democrats, I think they did, they effectively pressed the pause button after they lost to Trump, meaning we're not going to advance as a party. We're not going to do introspection. We're not going to actually oppose Donald Trump because they don't oppose him. They fast track his judges. They help him deregulate Wall Street. They vote for his border bill that they say is racist. They completely roll over for Donald Trump on Iran and Venezuela, Syria, the whole thing, right? So what they have effectively done, Aaron, is they have pressed the pause button. So we haven't had a conversation about what direction the country should go in and what's wrong with our opposition party and why doesn't anybody represent the workers. Nobody is having that conversation. And what they want to do is they want to have the 2020 election about the same thing that they had it about in 2016. Joe Biden's thing is, I'm a nicer guy than Donald Trump. And that's what they're going to run on again, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I got to run, so I want to take an opportunity to plug my new show, Pushback, which is airing on the Gray Zone, pushbackshow.com. And, you know, I just spoke to a Venezuelan economist who is very critical of Maduro, but he's honest enough to admit now, because he's seeing this happen, that U.S. sanctions on Venezuela could cause a famine. That's according to him. His name is Francisco Rodriguez. Again, a bitter opponent of Nicolas Maduro, but he's saying that according to the data he's seen, that U.S. sanctions on Venezuela threaten a famine there. And where have the Democrats been on that? They've been either silent on it for the most part or supportive. With only a few exceptions. And, you know, I say this anecdote often, but I think it says it all. There were bigger protests by liberal groups under Trump about the firing of Jeff Sessions than there were over his tax cut, the biggest upward transfer of wealth in U.S. history. And because people thought that the Jeff Sessions, him being fired, was a threat to Robert Mueller's job. Well, we just heard today that Mueller say that his investigation was never impeded with. So congratulations to liberals for that. And, you know, just today we're learning that Trump wants to kick 3 million people off of food stamps. You know, are we going to see Democrats hold hearings about that? Are we going to see around the clock coverage on MSNBC? Of course we're not, because they're not fundamentally interested in being a real resistance. They're not fundamentally interested in actually challenging Trump. They're interested in sustaining their own privilege. And that's why the only things that they have to go on are stupid conspiracy theories like the Russiagate, or making this all about Trump and Trump's personality and Joe Biden saying he's a better guy. You know, it's a joke, and it's not a real opposition party. And, you know, that's why the
proof that they're not a real opposition party, Aaron, is that here we are almost 3 years into Trump's presidency, and he has the highest approval ratings of his entire presidency right now. So this bullshit Russiagate thing is a complete failure because the Democratic Party is a complete failure. And guess who's been going along with the Russiagate? Bernie Sanders and the rest of the goddamn Democrats.
The walls are closing in, Jimmy. The walls are closing in.
Aaron Matei, everybody check out his new show, Pushback, on the Gray Zone, right? So it's grayzone.com, and
That's
you're
right.
doing that with Max Blumenthal and Ben Norton and a bunch of other people. So good luck to you on that show. And I always razz you, but we loved your show when it was on the Real News, and I really look forward to your new show.
Thanks, Jimmy. I really appreciate that.
Okay. Next live Jimmy Dore show, August 2nd in Burbank, California. Then we go to Denver, San Francisco, Baltimore, Seattle, and Honolulu for Christmas. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets and become a patron or a premium member. We give you tons of bonus material and lots more. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com. Sign up, become a member. Couldn't do it without your support.